Hello YouTube. Well, there are many mysterious things in the world around us, such as the ancient pyramids of Egypt, Stonehenge in England, and so much strange phenomena you can see in my videos pertaining to Eurasia and some other parts of the world, like this one. I want to return your attention today to India. India has been called the land of mysteries since the time immemorial, whether for its various enigmatic natural phenomena or peculiarities associated with its religions and culture. Let me present some today, and I ask you to look at my playlist India for the rest. Very mysterious is the ancient Indian temple of Sri Padmanabhaswamy, which hides a so far unsolved secret behind its sealed door. Padmanabhaswamy is a Hindu Vishnu temple located in the Indian city of Thiruvananthapuram. This is one of the 108 Divya Desams, the most sacred abodes or temples of Vishnu. The temple is a 30-meter 7-bay gate tower covered with elaborate carvings. Inside you can find a huge corridor with 324 relief pillars and a 25-meter golden pole topped with a flag. The walls of the building are covered with numerous frescoes depicting various stories from the beliefs of followers of Hinduism. The history of this temple, built in honor of the god Vishnu, is more than 1,000 years and dates back to the 4th century BC. During that time, the temple was repeatedly destroyed and rebuilt. In the form in which we know it now, the temple has existed since 1731. Its main tower, with a height of 30.5 meters, which has 7 levels, is decorated with many magnificent statues and sculptures. Only Hindus in appropriate attire can enter the temple. In the main hall of the temple, there is this shrine, a statue of the supreme god Vishnu, having a length of 5.5 meters. The deity is reclining on a bed of giant 1,000-headed serpent. The deity inside is Padmanabhaswamy, a form of Vishnu in a state of mystical sleep. The figure consists of 10,000 black stones. It is also covered with gold and jewels. The statue is visible from all 3 gates, but through one gate you can only see its feet, through others its stomach, and through others its head and hands. This Indian temple has earned the fame of the richest temple in the world. Yes, all its walls are covered with gold from the outside, but it's not just that. Not so long ago, a treasure was discovered in its underground vaults, the largest ever found. Through the principality of Travancore, in which the majestic temple was located, for a long time there was a fairly busy trade route along which merchants most often came to buy spices, and they all made generous offerings to the deity of this temple of Vishnu. Also, the gold that merchants used to pay for spices was stored here. In addition, on various solemn occasions, members of the rich families of India donated their jewelry to the temple. For centuries, the priests of the temple collected these donations and transferred them to an underground cache for storage. For a long time, the legend was alive among the people that untold riches were hidden in the underground storerooms of the temple. And indeed, in the year 2011, this legend took real shape. It turned out that in addition to the visible part of the majestic temple, Padmanabhaswamy also contains huge invisible riches, treasures. Their estimated value was about $10 billion. Padmanabhaswamy hid 1 trillion rupees in its underground vaults, which was estimated at about $20 billion in gold equivalent. So, where did they come from there? In ancient times, the area where the Hindu temple stands today was used again as a trade route for many centuries. So Indian and foreign merchants who came here to buy spices and other goods, presented gifts to the temple of Vishnu, not so much to receive divine blessing, but to placate the then rulers of the earth. All donations in the form of gold and gems were collected in a religious building. European traders were particularly generous. Padmanabhaswamy found a lot of ancient European coins and jewelry, as well as Aztec and Inca gold melted down into ingots. We will talk more about the Inca and India later. Well, it all started with the fact that in 2009, a lawyer, Sundararajan, petitioned the Supreme Court of India. In the petition, he demanded to open the underground storerooms of the temple and make proper accounting of the treasures stored there. Otherwise, they would simply be looted. There were suspicions that the priests themselves, from time to time, put their hands into the storerooms. The judges supported the lawyer's concerns, and soon one of the vaults was opened in order to make sure that treasures were really stored in it. Indian archaeologists who descended into the dungeons of the temple were absolutely shocked when they found that chests there with a ton of gold coins, a ton of gold products and ingots, as well as numerous bags of rubies, emeralds, pearls, and diamonds. Elaborate gold chains and numerous statues made of precious metals were also found there. According to experts, they did not even suspect that there could be at least 1% of such wealth in existence, and that's what appeared before the eyes of those present. When the granite slab was moved away, almost absolute darkness reigned behind it. It was diluted only by a dim ray of light from the doorway. They looked into the blackness of the storeroom, and an amazing sight opened up to them. It was as if the stars were twinkling in the sky on a moonless night. Diamonds and other precious stones flashed, reflecting the faint light coming from the open door. Most of the treasures were stored in wooden chests, but over time the tree turned to dust. Precious stones and gold just laid in heaps of the dust-covered floor. They've never seen anything like it. Despite the discontent of local residents who believe that it is unacceptable to touch the wealth of the gods, 5 of the 6 vaults located under the temple were opened by a court decision, and what was found in them turned out to be a real shock. About a ton of gold coins, another ton of gold bars, chests with sparkling diamonds, emerald, rubies. In addition, there is a golden statue of the god Vishnu, a throne studded with precious stones, a golden cloth weighing 36 kilograms, a huge chain 5.5 meters long, and a 5-kilogram golden sheaf, and much more. It is worth noting that before these riches were discovered in one of the Padmanabhaswamy's underground rooms, the Indian authorities had been suing local aristocrats for many years, or direct descendants of the Rajas who once owned the temple. The government insisted that the structure belongs to the state, and the treasures hidden in it are also state property. The aristocracy appealed to other laws according to which Padmanabhaswamy belongs to the descendants of its former owners. Officials still managed to look into the dungeon, to having received the appropriate permission from the court. They took over. The historical monument was placed under the control of the local government. Nevertheless, 89-year-old Uttaradan Tirunaal Martanda Varma, who is a descendant of the Raja of Travancore, began to protest the decision of the Supreme Court. According to the aristocrat, when India gained independence, new laws arose, according to which the Indians have the full right to dispose of property belonging to their ancestors, regardless of whether this property is a historical monument or not. The appeal was eventually rejected. Nevertheless, the restless aristocrat continues to defend his rights. He has come to terms with the fact that the government has taken possession of the above described riches, but insists with all his might that the last of the 5 hiding places, where no one has looked for many centuries and no one has opened. So that's what he claims. Now the temple is guarded around the clock by more than 200 police officers. CCTV cameras, metal detectors are installed. There are even machine guns. But this, of course, is not enough. A full accounting of the jewels has not been carried out. And reportedly, they are still being slowly pulled apart and disappear. So 5 vaults have been partially sorted out, but the 6th remains sealed. Each door is hermetically sealed, although it is unclear how. There are no locks, no latches, no keyholes in it. It is believed that the most valuable part of the wealth is hidden there, which can be worth several tens of billions of dollars. The room is sealed with a special snake sign that guarantees the inviolability of the room. A huge cobra with several heads is depicted on the door, a forbidding snake sign. According to legend, behind this door is the inviolable reserve of the god Vishnu, and it is forbidden to touch it. As in the case of other treasures, there was a legend about the curse of Padmanabhaswamy's treasures. It is noteworthy that these beliefs have become one of the reasons why the authorities have not yet decided to open the last room. The priests of the temple categorically do not allow to open this door, claiming that it promises untold misfortunes. Many people listen to them, especially after the mysterious death of Sundarajan, who started this whole epic with jewels. It happened a week after the opening of the vaults. According to the official account, he died of fever, although he did not complain about his health and was not ill for a long time. But people think otherwise. The autopsy failed to establish the cause of death. In addition, the chief of police, who was engaged in the protection of the jewelry, he died suddenly. A young and healthy man was found dead in his bed, while no traces of poisoning or violence were discovered. At the same time, it is not the jewels themselves that are supposedly cursed, but those people who decide to take possession of them for their own enrichment. It is believed that the treasures can be extracted from the temple and used only if India is in danger, and the residents of the region will need a lot of money for military expenses. They say that once, at the end of the 19th century, an attempt was made to open this door. According to one of their local myths, at the end of the 19th century, the British, who felt themselves the full masters of India, invaded Padmanabhaswamy, and ignoring all the warnings of the priests and the Raja, decided to plunder the forbidden treasury. However, as soon as the British were armed with torches and firearms at the bottom, some of them ran back with terrible screams. According to them, there were thousands of snakes in the darkness of the dungeon, which instantly attacked the strangers. When the rest of the colonists went down, they found the corpses of their compatriots, bitten by snakes from head to toe. So countless treasures of the Padmanabhaswamy temple have remained untouched so far. So the door to the 6th vault remains closed, and the intrigue around the jewels of the Padmanabhaswamy temple, it continues. Now let's talk more about the Inca and India. Hampi is a village that is located among the ruins of Vijayanagar, the former capital of the Vijayanagar Empire, destroyed in the Middle Ages. There are many temples in Hampi, located in the east-central Karnataka, India. Temples that were built in immemorial times. Various bas-reliefs are carved on the columns or pillars of these temples, which depict various deities, characters of ancient Indian epics, and so forth. However, among these typical characters, you can see figures that do not fit into this pattern in any way. These are bas-reliefs on which the real Incas are carved, who, as is known to us, lived in South America and the territory of Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, and so forth. Compare with the Inca images and things found in South America. You have the photographs. Even the heavy earrings that can be seen on the Inca figurine in Hampi, even that matches. This is a historical mystery, since in our historical science, these two cultures are not connected at all. And this is far from the only mystery, because there are other similarities of architecture and culture on different continents. I will get back to this in my future videos, because it has to do more with architecture, but amazing similarities. So how did ancient Incas come to ancient India? Were they using those strange aircraft that I talked about in my other video about India? Quite possible. But let's talk about more about that area. And let me just add that we really know very little about our past. It's in the mists of time, and maybe there are people on this earth, like that society that I told you about, that have the keys to knowledge, but we just don't know enough. We're just trying to put together fragments of a mirror that was broken long ago. I used this metaphor many years ago in my Russian language articles, published in many countries where the Russians resided, and in my lectures later. And I think this is appropriate, and it can be used to any ancient culture in Eurasia, in Americas. Well, Hampi is rightfully on a par with the main Indian attractions, and you will definitely see its chariot on Indian tourist avenues. So what is this Hampi? What is it so famous for? And what's interesting there? In fact, Hampi is just a small Indian village located near the ruins of the ancient city of Vijayanagar, which was the capital of a very large and powerful once Vijayanagar Empire. The city was very large, and at the time of its dawn in the 15th and 16th centuries, it had about 500,000 inhabitants. And its area was about 30 square kilometers. But I am not sure if we really know when it all started. It is said that in its scope it even surpassed Rome during the heyday of the Roman Empire. But at the end of the 16th century, the empire fell into decline. Muslim troops captured the city and almost completely destroyed it, so that only majestic ruins scattered over a vast territory remained of the ancient capital. The lost cities used to amaze with their splendor, but one day it always happens that people leave them. Only the ruins now remain of their former glory. Majestic Memphis, the bride of the desert Palmyra, the rocky city of Petra, sacred Angkor, sunken Mahabalipuram. Most of the lost cities have already been found and explored by scientists. Well, apparently this is one of such places. Now, how the British colonists or colonizers saw Hampi, we can judge from the Kipling's description. It is believed that it was the city that Mowgli's creator depicted as the city of monkeys. Once, a long time ago, the king built a city on a hill. One could see the remains of stone roads that led to the ruined gates, where the last fragments of the plank doors still hung on worn, rusty hinges. Trees were rooted into the walls. The fortifications were loosened and collapsed. Thick vines hung in shaggy strands from the windows of the wall towers. The hill was crowned by a large roofless palace. The marble lining its courtyards and fountains head was cracked, covered with red and green spots. Even the granite slabs that covered the courtyard where the royal elephants used to live, had parted and lifted thanks to the grass that had grown between them and here and there young trees. From the palace one could see rows of roofless houses, which gave the city the appearance of desolate honeycombs full of black shadows. A shapeless block of stone, the remains of an idol, in the square where the four roads intersected. Depressions and pits and street corners where public wells and collapsed domes of temples with wild fig trees growing green on their edges used to be located. During the British Raj, the abandoned city aroused curiosity of archaeologists. Since the middle of the 19th century, scientific works based on the results of excavations in Hampi began to appear. The Hampi scientists were primarily interested in how Vijayanagar was once the majestic capital of the most powerful empire in the south and central India. The name Hampi, by which the city is known to us, came from Pampa, the old name of the Tungabhadra River. The place on the southern bank of this river, where the city was founded, has long been considered sacred by Hindus. The history of Hampi, according to legend, begins with the kingdom of monkeys, Kishkindha, whose rulers Vali and Sugriva are known from Indian mythology. It is believed that Kishkindha was located at this palace. The hero of the sacred epic Ramayana, Prince Rama, is the seventh incarnation of God. The natural landscape of Hampi is completely cosmic, out of this world. Huge cracked stones seem to be piled on top of each other on purpose. Rocks, cobblestones of incredible size do not give the impression of natural formations. It seems that some giant was building something out of them. Then he got tired of it and he scattered the cobblestones. So according to legend, Hanuman's warriors played with pebbles. Locals call these ancient mountains the devil's game. However, geology claims that a cosmic rockfall, volcanic cataclysm, or giant games have nothing to do with this part of the Deccan Plateau. Granite strata under the Earth firmament were formed more than 3 billion years ago during the Archean geological period, and later in the Mesozoic, the separation of Gondwana, the giant supercontinent of the southern hemisphere. I told you about it in my other videos. That's when it took place, and its basalt rocks penetrated into the granite of the present Hindustan peninsula. It was this junction, which, creating incredible landscape combinations, was influenced by the sun, wind, and rain for millions of years. And the brothers Harihara and Bukka, who laid the foundation of the Sangama dynasty in 1336, chose it for their capital. Long before the arrival of Europeans, Hampi was actively trading with the Arab East. The city was rich and prosperous. The change of the ruling dynasty of Vijayanagar from Sangam to Sala did not affect its destiny too much. The heyday of the city came during the reign of Krishna Deva Raya. That was in the 16th century, who was distinguished by piety, meek disposition, and good looks. His portraits still adorn the homes of local residents. Krishna Deva Raya enriched the city with magnificent buildings, from temples and palaces to aqueducts that supplied water to the surrounding mountains. At that time, the city had an almost complete monopoly on the trade in Arabian horses and Indian spices. Arab merchants brought here thoroughbred horses for the Vijayanagar cavalry and took away full holds of spices, and spices cost a lot of money at that time. Portuguese traveler Domingo Paes, who visited the city before the Muslim invasion, wrote this: "The city is not inferior in size to Rome. The palaces are much larger than the castles of Lisboa. It all seems like paradise. Today one can only imagine the splendor of this thriving city. On the days of religious holidays, several hundreds decorated bulls were carried through the streets of Vijayanagar, and they were sacrificed to their beloved gods. Beautiful city women literally fell under the weight of gold jewelry, which were worn on the occasion of celebrations. Between the 14th and 16th centuries, the city was the most powerful Hindu capital on Deccan. Travelers were amazed by its size and wealth. They talk about markets littered with silk and precious stones, about beautiful courtesans, escort women, decorated with jewels, patterned palaces, and merry festivities. But most of all, the Vitala temple is known for its musical columns or pillars. These are 56 granite columns or pillars, 3.6 meters high, with a diameter of 1 to 0.5 meters, which support the dome. When the wind blows over the Deccan Plateau, the stone, it makes a sound. Also, each of the columns emits peculiar sounds when struck by some light object. One sounds like a tambourine, the other like a drum, the following like a different stringed and wind instruments. By the way, the same can be said about several columns in the grandeur, huge Meenakshi temple in Madurai, Tamil Nadu. But you just need to press the palm of your hand on this column to get a sound effect. Trying to solve the mystery of the singing pillars, the British even sewed one of them to pieces. In fact, the middle part of each column, made of a single piece of stone, is additionally excised into smaller columns of different diameters, which are nothing more than musical pipes. Therefore, when they are impacted or hit, they make sounds of different tonality. Each column has its own sound amplitude because it has a different number of pipes, which also different diameters. Unfortunately, the sound of the columns has suffered greatly as a result of the destruction to which the temple and its finely calculated acoustic technique have been subjected. At the time of Krishna Deva, the music pouring from here could be heard at a distance of 1.5 kilometers, and the temple itself, richly decorated with elegant bas reliefs and paintings, was additionally decorated with the finest muslin fabrics of different shades. Each of the columns and the outer walls of the temple contain many symmetrically arranged recesses, in which there were lamps that illuminated the majestic building and filled it with the aroma of oil. There is a belief that anyone who at least once hears the same magical sound of columns that the ancients once heard will wait for the fulfillment of their most secret desires, and obviously gets them. Since 1986, the city of Vijayanagar, under the name of Hampi, has been included in the UNESCO heritage. It is being actively excavated and restored, and it is rightfully one of the most interesting historical places in India. But not just India, the world. The excavation area is huge, so you will hardly have time to see even its main attractions on foot. It is still better to move by transport, or, like some people, take a rickshaw at the very least, and they can also act as a guide, but that's your preference. I wouldn't do it. The most important, the most ancient, and the most famous place in Hampi is Virupakshi temple, where, as a rule, a visit to the ruins of ancient Vijayanagar begins. The temple is dedicated to Virupaksha, once the incarnation of the god Shiva, although by and large it is just a temple of Shiva. Many believe that this huge pyramid is the temple or its roof, but it is not. This so-called pyramid is actually called Gopuram or Gopura, and it is just a gateway to the temple. Yes, it is the gate, and these gates, as a rule, are much more colorful and higher than the Hindu temples themselves. And the meaning of Gopuram is that passing to the gate you approach, as it were, and you enter the temple with a pure soul. I want to know how the Inca entered India, because their images is right there. This is amazing to know that in the past, ancient civilizations that sometimes we know very little about, but what we do know is more than fascinating. How did they communicate with each other? And this is one of my areas of research, which I'll continue. And for this, one of the reasons I went to Africa, I went to Mexico a number of times, a few other places, and I'll continue. If you can support my research, I will appreciate it. You can find the links in the description to this video, and please subscribe to my channel and tell others, because there is much more I want to tell you about about Ukraine, my homeland, about Eurasia, about Africa, about India and other parts of the world. Thank you.